toward, besides
You're joining a lecture at Stanford?
It's been around since
the year
the 40s.
2010.
And the answer is yes. Several of the companies have the ability now to grow the viruses in animal cells, which is a whole lot easier, faster, and safer in terms of not getting it contaminated. And we're just not to the point of licensing by the FDA. And in order to use a vaccine in the United States, the FDA has to approve it. So it will be, those new vaccines will be coming down the pike. My friend who runs the vaccine program for Novartis thinks that within 2 years we'll have animal tissue culture cell-based vaccine. You have a question?
You said that the peak has already occurred on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Does that give you some kind of predictors for the situation on the West Coast?
Yeah, it means probably that we'll start to see some declines, I would guess, by December. But that doesn't mean it'll be gone. It just means that the largest number of infections will have occurred by then. But we'll still see H1N1 for some period of time. I think it's not really predictable about how long. There's actually flu around every week of every month of the year. It's just,
Yeah. It's omnipresent. And if you follow things right now, it's on countertops in restaurants. It's on the countertop at the post office. It might even be on food. Why? Viruses are everywhere, lurking to get you.
Of numbers. I mean, people can get flu in the summer. As long as there are people who have influenza, they can transmit it to other individuals. It's just that the largest number of people with flu occurs in the winter months. And we also...
And that's because that the injections are given in the fall. And they created by the injections or the flu shots.
So expect that the old viruses will also return.
That would be a good movie, The Return of the Old Viruses. Yeah, because they just sort of disappear into the sunset like the old cowboy movies, right? They just ride off and disappear. But then a new one reappears. They come out of nowhere and they go into nowhere. And do you know why? Because they are nothing. Nothing. They are figments of your imagination run wild that are promoted by hoaxsters.
We've had just a very few in Santa Clara County so far of the old seasonal viruses have shown up. It's just completely overwhelmed by the H1N1 right now. But we don't know what the mix will be, say, in April of next year.
Yeah, mix them up. Put them in a bowl and mix them up. A mixer bowl. Something new will, quote, emerge. Don't you get it? It's the language of Darwin.
Here in 2010, we are encouraging everybody to get vaccinated, both the old 3-strain that are in the seasonal flu vaccine as well as in the new strain.
Yeah, the old and the new. That's why you get a flu shot every year, right?
As soon as you can, as soon as it's possible. Yes?
I wondered how long the immunity lasts, and also if there is the kind of a genetic natural selection thing for families who survived the 1918 and were relatives of them, if there's kind of a... Because they feel the plague is that way, that we have kind of some kind of genetic protection.
Two really good questions. One is there some kind of genetic selection for, and could it be passed on to the descendants of 1918? And as far as we know, no. That there don't seem to be any specific genotypes of humans who seem to be more or less resistant. Now, how bad the flu is has a tremendous amount of variability, and that does depend on individual host factors, if you will. But as far as I know, there's no genetic base.
Okay, now I think when they use the word host, that they are mocking the Roman Catholic definition of communion, because the priest will raise the host, and by the so-called Mass, the host will turn into the body of Jesus Christ. So when they use the word host, I believe it's a mockery of what Protestants call the sacrament of Holy Communion. Okay? And devil worshippers and occultists love to mock anything that they know is sacred in the minds of people. Now, I know you may not be Roman Catholic, and you may have a lot of thoughts and ideas about, it is a false faith that fell under the power of the Cabal system, and that is true. However, it does not mean that every individual that's a Roman Catholic is somehow a devil worshiper. That is incorrect. Many, many folks go to the Mass to receive the host so that they are indwelt by the body of Christ. So I believe this is a mockery when they bring up the word host. And of course that ends up being a reference to cells in the human body.
For susceptibility to the flu. Because in a pandemic, at least 30% of the global population gets sick. That's essentially everybody. Is equally likely. And I'm sorry, what was your first question? Oh, how long the immunity lasts? Well, the immunity to the hemagglutinin and the neuraminidase probably lasts for several months to years, but
see, that's all coordinated with getting a, quote, flu shot every year. So your immunity is only going to last for a year, so you better get another shot.
because the virus keeps making these minor modifications. Oh.
Yeah, now there's your Darwinianism nonsense. It keeps evolving. Everything's in a state of evolving, right? And these viruses evolve, they emerge, they mutate, they mix and match strains, anything at all to keep the hoax science alive. Virology is a hoax science from day one. Listen up. Listen carefully. Viruses do not exist. Period. Don't believe in them. If you do, you're going to be sucked into the hoax lie system. But look at them and say they don't exist. And that is the truth, okay? Now what exists are liars. And what exists are shots. And what's in the shots produces physiological results in people. All right? All this nonsense about viruses. Virology is hoaxology. The word virus comes from a Latin word, and it just means secretion of poison, singular, from an animal or a plant. And most likely, if you said you had a virus, most likely before 1900 it meant you got bit by a snake that had poison. Or you were out in the woods and you stumbled upon something like poison ivy, something that's irritating to the skin. All right? That's all it meant, and it was singular. Of course, the hoaxsters borrowed this term, and they gave it total new meaning. It's all a lie. All of it. Virology, viruses, all of it. Now that's a pretty harsh word for you to accept, And if you don't want to accept it, that's okay. You just keep believing in him. But I'm going to tell you, if you have the audacity and the daring and the faith to believe what I just told you, you will never fear again about any of this nonsense.
Over the course of time, it's really important, if you really want to have the most effective vaccine, to make a new vaccine. Make sure you've tuned up the vaccine to match the...
Tuned up the vaccine. Well, now it's a piano. You got to get a piano tuner in to tune up the vaccine, right? Because it's different all the time. Why? Because they're just different lives. That's why.
Most recent strains. And it's probably not... Those two proteins are not as... the antibodies aren't as...
See, you make it up as you go along. And when people have, quote, valid questions, it's hard for this hoaxer to answer them because the hoaxers basically know how to give a presentation. But when there's dialogue, look at this. Look at this. This is supposed to be a reputable speaker? And stumbling like this? Come on.
Long-lived, as one would like. The other thing that manufacturers...
Okay, and then drop the voice, right? In other words, it's not coming out quite as clear and confident as before.
You're looking for is a universal vaccine. In other words, a component of influenza virus, not the hemagglutinin or the neuraminidase, but something that's stable, so that we could immunize people once, and that might last years and years and years. So far, magic bullet hasn't been found, though.
Oh, look at that! Let's look at that again!
Hemagglutinin and the neuraminidase probably lasts for several months to years, but because the virus keeps making these minor modifications over the course of time, it's really important, if you really want to have the most effective vaccine, to make a new vaccine. Make sure you've tuned up the vaccine to match the most recent strains. And it's probably not... Those two proteins are not as... the antibodies aren't as long-lived as one would like. The other thing that manufacturers are looking for is a universal vaccine. In other words, a component of influenza virus, not the hemagglutinin or the neuraminidase, but something that's stable, so that we could immunize people once, and that might last years and years and years.
And she knows she don't
So
want
far,
to immunize
magic
once.
bullet hasn't been...
The magic bullet. Look at that. That's a touch your nose. I lied to my liars. Because she knows you don't want to, quote, develop a vaccine once for 10 years or once for lifetime. It's going to go on every year. So he or she or it has to touch the nose. Pinocchio grew his nose when there were lies. Thank you for watching.